in the womb, makes space, creates, waits. A form which is not my own, yet of me, from me, within me. The time comes, birthed, born, breeds my new creation. I begin in the womb. A thought, a spark, a potential being. I've begun forming, growing, hoping the time comes. Birthed, born, breeds a new creation. Creative compassion is inspired by mirroring the womb and compassion. Creative compassion fundamentally shifts compassion outwards, beyond ourselves and towards the other. Let's begin with two words, the womb and compassion. Compassion in English stems from the Latin com, with, and pati, to suffer, producing that popular understanding of compassion as to suffer with, putting ourselves in the shoes of the other or feeling their pain. The biblical Hebrew racham goes way beyond this. Racham, to have compassion, rachum, compassionate, and rachamim, compassion, all share the same three root letters as rechem, R-H-M. Rechem is uniquely reserved for the female reproductive organ, the womb. Now, just because these words share the same three foundational letters does not mean they have the same meaning. But there is something that grabs my attention, a depth of meaning to be mined, as we mirror these strangely related terms. By mirroring the womb and compassion, we reveal glimpses of creative compassion. Using body parts to express human emotion is seen elsewhere in Scripture. Of particular note is the Greek word splagnon, which means the inner parts or the guts or the liver, and in some extra-biblical texts can also be the womb. Splagnon is the bodily metaphor for pity or compassion. And so these pairings, rechem and racham, splagnon and the verb splagnitzo, embody compassion, perhaps even in wombing compassion. Compassion is seated at the epicentre of the human body. The womb has the potential to hold new life, to grow and nurture the other. The womb can and does suffer, and it suffers with the one that it holds in a variety of painful, devastating, and complex ways. But the potential for the womb is ultimately creative. The womb makes space to grow and nurture the other. And so as we mirror the womb and compassion, we go beyond the Latin to suffer with and begin to explore compassion that is creative at its core. By mirroring the womb and compassion, we inspire creative compassion. What, if anything, does creative compassion mean for us? Firstly, creative compassion is from God. Our God is gracious and rachum, slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love. These liturgical lines echoing through Scripture speak of a God who is compassionate, rachum. Our God is characteristically compassionate, a compassionate creator whose creativity in creation was outward, beyond God's self towards the other. Jesus and his 12 disciples got in a boat and went to a desert place. Many people followed him so that when they landed, a great crowd had gathered. Jesus looked on the crowd and had compassion on them, because they were like sheep without a shepherd. And so Jesus taught them many things. And when it grew dark, he said to his disciples, "Give them something to eat." And so with 5 loaves and 2 fish, they fed a great crowd. Jesus had compassion, splagnizzo, on the great crowd. Jesus was in a desert place, a barren space, a wasteland of nothingness, and into that place he created, multiplying bread and fish, sustaining and nurturing this great crowd with physical and spiritual food. Jesus, the embodied and enwombed one, had compassion. This is our God, the embodied and compassionate creator. By mirroring the womb and compassion, we inspire creative compassion from God. Creative compassion is also for all. Creative compassion is not reserved for the womb. It's not reserved for mothers, not reserved for people who've experienced creative compassion in their own womb. But creative compassion is for all. Because all are made in the image of God. We do not all bear children, but we all bear God's image. And so we are called to creative compassion as image bearers of our compassionate Creator. By mirroring the womb and compassion, we inspire creative compassion from God and for all. Finally, creative compassion is for now. It is for such a time as this. As we look upon the crowds, as we see the chaos of pandemic, the devastation of injustice, and the gut-wrenching grief of disease, we are called to creative compassion. Creative compassion that goes beyond simply to suffer with. Creative compassion that is not content with reactive responses, a sticky plaster, a patch-up job, or simplistic excuses. Creative compassion builds relationships instead of a one-off handout. It invites people in rather than transferring a tenner. Creative compassion is active imagining. It is envisaging and enacting a future that is better. Creative compassion makes space to grow and nurture the other. By mirroring the womb and compassion, we inspire creative compassion from God for all and for now. Let's return to those 2 words, the womb and compassion. What if our compassion went beyond to suffer with and instead embraced compassion? To be with passion, perhaps even the passion of Christ, which goes beyond the suffering of Jesus Christ on the cross, which is God's salvific act for humanity. Not for God's self, but for the other. By mirroring the womb and compassion, we inspire creative compassion from God for all and for now. Out from the womb, great groans goes this life of another, to nurture, to give, to grow. The time will come, rebirthed, reborn, deep breath, create.